Have you ever wondered why some women live alone, no partner, no visible search for one, and yet no trace of despair? The easy explanations don't hold up. It isn't loneliness. It isn't a lack of options. It isn't heartbreak curdled into bitterness. The real answer is far less comfortable, because it dismantles almost everything we were taught about what a woman's life is supposed to look like. When a woman chooses solitude, she isn't losing her way. She's finding it. And that kind of discovery rarely comes with applause. It comes quietly, in silence, in steadiness, in a freedom most people have never learned to recognize, let alone respect. She isn't lonely. She's selective. She isn't cold. She's simply stopped offering warmth to people who never wanted to feel it. There is something quietly unsettling about a woman who doesn't need a relationship to feel complete. It undercuts the logic of control. It dissolves the old myth of emotional dependency, and it exposes an uncomfortable truth. Most people don't know what to do with someone who isn't waiting to be rescued, including, often, the woman herself, until she learns to recognize her own reflection in that stillness. Carl Jung wrote about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we push away rather than face. In a loose sense, many of these women live out something like that collective shadow. They are what a lot of people quietly wish they could become, but rarely have the nerve to embody. They don't perform their choices for an audience. They don't announce themselves to be noticed. They withdraw not to disappear, but to stay intact. They're less interested in being chosen than in choosing their own peace. That unsettles people, because the world keeps insisting that partnership is urgent, non-negotiable, the whole point, while these women have quietly discovered something else, that being with yourself can be enough. The woman who lives alone isn't lost. She's simply operating by different rules. Nothing here is begged for. Everything is chosen. Approval isn't required. Presence is. That's often exactly why she draws criticism, suspicion, and 100 attempts to label her. But behind what looks like absence is a kind of presence that fills a room on its own terms. She isn't holding out for just any love. She's holding out for one that won't shrink her. And until it arrives, she stays whole without it. Maybe none of this lands yet. Maybe it sounds like exaggeration, or pride, or old wounds dressed up as philosophy. But somewhere underneath, there's a quiet question that won't quite go away. What if that solitary path is actually the one road to the love that matters most? The one that starts with you. Sanctuary, not emptiness. The silence around a woman who lives alone isn't a void. It's a sanctuary. People who don't understand its value tend to call her cold, distant, maybe even arrogant. What they miss is that she didn't build that space to shut the world out. She built it so she wouldn't lose herself in it again. Jung also observed that what we refuse to face in ourselves, we tend to project onto others. Maybe that's why solitude so often gets mistaken for absence, when really it can be the ground where self-discovery takes root. While most people search for wholeness through connection with others, this woman turned her attention inward, and there, in her own depths, she met the things she'd spent years avoiding: childhood wounds, quiet abandonments, attachments she once mistook for love. Her decision to be alone didn't come from an open wound. It came from a scar that finally closed. She hasn't stopped believing in love. She'd just stopped accepting the versions of it that made her smaller. This is a woman who knows chaos intimately. She has loved until she lost herself. She has given until there was nothing left to give. She has settled for crumbs that should never have been offered as a full meal. And at some point, she woke up, not suddenly, but through a slow accumulation of disappointments that eventually stopped hurting and started teaching her something. What looks like coldness now is really emotional maturity. And maturity is unsettling because it asks for depth, presence, and honesty in return. She isn't looking for company for its own sake. She's looking for reciprocity. She's no longer moved by promises, only by people who actually show up. That's likely why she can seem hard to reach. She isn't looking to be saved. She's looking to be truly seen. And that takes more than charm. It takes the courage to go where most people won't. Many stop right there, not because she's difficult, but because she'd worked. Two's already whole, and a whole person tends to provoke two very different reactions. Admiration from those chasing the same wholeness, and unease from those still waiting for someone else to complete them. She isn't trying to complete anyone. She's waiting to meet someone who overflows the way she does. Until then, she stays on her own, not out of fate, but out of loyalty to herself. Preservation, not isolation. There's a real difference between isolating yourself and protecting yourself, and the world doesn't always make room for that distinction. We're taught that happy endings only come in pairs, and that being unpartnered is somehow a quiet kind of failure. Jung suggested that authenticity has little room to breathe wherever convention rules, unchallenged. This woman doesn't live by convention, she lives by what feels true to her. She hears the familiar lines, "You're too picky, you should be more open, nobody's perfect." And she meets them with a calm, faintly amused smile, because what gets called picky is often just the bare minimum, the standard it took her years to realize she was always allowed to hold. She isn't chasing perfection. She's looking for someone who has done enough inner work to love without breaking what they've will. That isn't easy to find, and she knows it. The discomfort she causes has less to do with anything she says and more to do with what she lives. Living proof that happiness doesn't require another person's presence to validate it. That's uncomfortable for anyone who's built their sense of security on someone else needing them. It unsettles people who feed on insecurity in others, and it can quietly challenge women still caught in the need for approval. But she isn't trying to confront anyone. She's simply living as herself, and that, on its own, tends to hold up a mirror few people asked for. She isn't in a hurry, and she won't rush herself to make anyone comfortable. She moves at her own pace, in a culture that wants everything immediately. She wants depth in a world chasing distraction. She wants real presence, not shallow availability. She's after something soul deep, while much of the world settles for looking interesting online. When she says no, she means it. When she walks away, it's not theater, it's self-protection. When she stays home instead of spending an evening on someone hollow, that isn't arrogance. It's clarity, hard-won through experience. And that clarity, earned, not performed, might be her quietest form of rebellion. Because she isn't living to please anyone. She's living to simply be. And that, more than anything else, is what makes her hard to categorize. The inward journey. What unsettles people most about this woman probably isn't her solitude at all. It's the peace she's found inside it. Jung's idea of individuation describes exactly this kind of process, becoming fully yourself, without the masks, without the compromises. It wasn't a comfortable process for her. It meant stripping away old defenses, confronting the patterns of dependency she'd inherited, and rebuilding herself with intention, piece by piece. She no longer measures herself through other people's eyes. She sees herself through her own. Have you ever wondered whether being alone is failure or freedom? Have you ever felt the need to explain yourself for not having someone beside you? She's felt that too. She once believed something was wrong with her for being single in a world that idolizes coupledom, even the unhappy kind. But eventually she understood something simple. It's better to be alone than invisible inside a relationship. That was the day she made herself a promise never to settle again. Her path hasn't been a straight line. There have been days of doubt, moments of nostalgia, long quiet nights. But there's also a strength that's grown with every decision made in full awareness. She learned that real love doesn't cage, consume, or manipulate. It liberates, adds, and supports without smothering. Until she finds that, she keeps growing on her own, not out of pride, but out of integrity. She has shattered old versions of herself, faced what she didn't want to see, and come back more whole for it. Now that she recognizes her own worth, she refuses to be half of anything again. She doesn't want someone to complete her. She wants someone to build alongside, someone who shares that same awareness. That's a demanding kind of intimacy because it requires real emotional responsibility, and not everyone is willing to love that way. Most people still love from lack, or fear, or the need to possess. If she's walking alone right now, it's because every step has taught her something. Every no is an act of self-respect. Every boundary is a reminder that love was never meant to be begged for. She no longer needs to prove herself to anyone, and that quiet certainty changes the way she moves through the world, not because of any performance of strength, but because of the clarity underneath it. What broke her open? The woman who lives alone today isn't the same one who once begged to be chosen. Something in her broke, and it was exactly that break that set her free, because sometimes the soul only finds its true shape after collapse. She's faced her own history honestly, inherited fears, old family patterns, wounds that weren't only hers, but belonged to generations of women before her. She broke cycles instead of repeating them. She said no to relationships that replayed the same script. She learned it was never her job to fix, heal, or rescue anyone, and that accepting less out of fear of being alone was its own kind of loss. When she stopped settling, the world tried to tell her she was wrong. She stood her ground anyway, first with uncertainty, then with awareness, and eventually with something steadier, the quiet confidence of someone who has already survived her own hardest chapters and no longer fears solitude. She learned to nourish herself in silence, to find warmth in her own company. She isn't unreachable, she's simply no longer available to be overrun. There's a real difference between opening your heart and letting yourself be torn apart by it. She still opens, but only for people who show up honestly, without rehearsed lines or empty promises. She's seen enough now to tell the difference between presence and performance, and she doesn't hesitate to walk away from the latter. Her transformation runs deeper than a change in habits. It feels almost archetypal, like she's tapped into something older than her own story. The idea that women were never meant only to serve, but to express, not to be shaped by others, but to overflow on their own terms. In touching that, something in her woke up, intuitive, emotionally sovereign, alone but nowhere near lost. No label sticks to her anymore. Not cold, not difficult, not distant, because she's no longer trying to fit anywhere. She's expanding instead. She isn't chasing attention, she radiates presence. She isn't waiting to be picked, she does the choosing. That quiet reversal can be disorienting for anyone used to more familiar rules. But she's already past that. She's found, on the other side, that real connection only begins once you've loved yourself enough not to need anyone else to complete you. The new archetype. There's something almost sacred in the way she moves through the world now. No need for applause, no craving for public proof. Her confidence doesn't announce itself. It simply exists, quietly, and that's exactly where her strength lives. She hasn't given up on love. She still wants to be held, chosen, wanted, but not at the cost of herself. She's spent too long trying to fit into shapes too small for who she actually is. Now she only offers herself where there's room to be whole. That takes more than romantic hope. It takes awareness, and the willingness to keep choosing love even after facing your own shadow. She isn't looking for a fairy tale. She's looking for an alliance of equals, a connection with no one dominating and no one shrinking, where both people can grow side by side without dimming their own colors. If that sounds like too much to ask, she's made peace with waiting rather than settling for less. To some, that looks like arrogance. In truth, it's just self-respect, fully grown. She represents something like a new archetype, a woman who walked past the surface and went looking for depth instead, who got tired of being merely wanted and decided to be respected instead. She chose solitude not because she gave up on love, but because she came to understand that real love never asks you to disappear a little to make room for it. She doesn't need to raise her voice to be heard. Her presence tends to speak first. And that isn't mysticism. It's simply the calm of someone who has already been through the hardest parts of herself and chosen, deliberately, to come back in peace. Not because her fears vanished, but because she learned to carry them without being ruled by them. She hasn't rejected love. She's rejected the unbalanced kind, the sort that asks one person to dim so the other can shine. She's after a love where nothing about her needs editing, a love that can hold her contradictions, shadow and light, laughter and grief, stillness and storm, because anyone who only wants the easy parts of her hasn't really understood love at all. She is, in a sense, too whole for half measures, too free for arrangements dressed up as care, too aware to settle for anything shallow, and still strong enough to keep choosing this harder, more honest path, even when it's lonely, even when it's misunderstood. That's what it looks like to trade quick validation for something truer and slower to arrive. Women like her tend to unsettle old expectations simply by existing. Women who don't need rescuing, who won't be reshaped to fit someone else's comfort. In living that way, she quietly rewrites the old rule that a woman's worth depends on having someone beside her, and in doing so, she gives others quiet permission to do the same. So she keeps going, some days with tears, some days with her head high, but always grounded, because she knows she isn't truly alone, she's with herself, and after everything she's survived, that is more than enough. Whatever love comes next won't need to rescue her. It will simply be something to celebrate, not a way to fill an empty space, but a place for something already whole to overflow into. When a woman chooses to walk her own path, the world often rushes to convince her she's making a mistake. But somewhere inside, something is quietly falling into place. Not pride, not rebellion, just a kind of wisdom that only grows in silence. Jung called this individuation, the slow work of becoming fully yourself, without masks, without apology. That truth doesn't need to announce itself. It shows up in the way she closes a door without resentment, steps back from what no longer nourishes her, and smiles in peace even with no one else in the room, because she's learned that being alone isn't a punishment. It's a form of loyalty to herself. The world will keep suggesting she's missing something. It will keep offering distractions and love designed for appearances rather than substance. But she's already looked past the surface. This was never really about finding someone else. It was about never losing herself again. And once that settles in, everything shifts. Desire becomes discernment, lack becomes choice, and waiting becomes its own kind of path forward. What once hurt becomes instruction. What once held her back becomes the thing that finally set her free. Maybe something in this stirred a memory in you, an old ache, a woman you once knew, or the woman you've slowly become. If any part of it resonated, maybe it's because you, too, are ready for a different kind of love. One that begins with making peace with yourself. One built on silence, presence, and honesty. A love that was never meant to be negotiated or begged for. And if that love hasn't found you yet, maybe it's simply because you needed to become the version of yourself who no longer accepts less than she deserves, first.